Introduction to Android Studio. An app, short for application, is a software program designed to run on mobile devices such as smartphones and tablets. Apps can be downloaded from app stores such as Google Play Store or Apple App Store. Android Studio is the official integrated development environment for Android apps developed. Android Studio supports several programming languages, including Java, Kotlin, and SCE8. The entire upcoming video outline would be as following. Installation of Android Studio, where would demonstrate the steps to download and install Android Studio on a Windows or Mac computer. Next is configuring Android Studio, where demonstrate how to configure Android Studio settings, followed by a walkthrough on how to build the first app, which is the Hello World. Finally, would end with extending current app functionality by adding a button and showing a toast. Let's look into installation of Android Studio. Installation of Android Studio. Next, let's look into how to install and set up Enter Android Studio. Open up any web browser that you have. Install it on your PC. I'm using Google Chrome and searching for Android Studio in the search bar. After clicking on the search, the first and foremost that appears on the search Android Studio. Android developers click on it. In the web page, under download, there would be an official download of the latest available version every time there are new releases. There are two ways to download the Android Studio. For the first time, users installing Android Studio could click on the download from the main website. For existing users who wish to upgrade the latest version, could upgrade from the Android Studio under check for update, which is faster. After the user clicks on the download Android Studio, there's some terms and conditions that we have to go through. And once done, click OK for the download to begin. The space required is less than 1 GB, so please allocate the space in the devices before the installation process. Once download has been completed, right-click on the Android Studio and run as administrator to start the installation. If there is already a previous version installed before, there would be an uninstall old version and the location was installed previously. Click on the Next to uninstall the old version and proceed to install the new version of Android Studio. Proceed by clicking Next and choose the installation location. The installation will just take at most 5 minutes to install. After installation has been completed, select the checkbox to start Android Studio and click Finish. It would launch the Android Studio and would take a few minutes for the first time. Let's look into configuration of Android Studio. Configuration of Android Studio. Once the Android Studio is open, there is a welcome screen. Click on the New Project or go to the File, New Project to create a new project. Next, there would be an activity template the user can choose. This is the user interface for your app, and there are various options to choose from. For example, you can choose the empty activity template or any template and click Next. In the New Project window, there are few project options to be filled up. This includes choosing the project name, package name, and selecting the location where to save the project files. Next, we should select the minimum and target SDK versions, as well as the language you want to program the app. After clicking on Finish, and the project would be created. When the Android project window is open, the dependency for the new project files would be created and sync. If we are new to Android Studio, there is always a dialog showing useful tips that could be used in Android Studio. Next, let's look into how to set up the environmental variable for Android Studio in Windows. Go to Windows Search and key in Edit the System, Environment Variables and select it. Click on the environmental variables and add the location where Android Home and Java Home are being saved. The Android Home is the variable name, and the variable value is where the Software Development Kit (SDK) is located. The Java Home is the variable name, and the variable value is the Java location. Once the variables have been saved, go back to Android Studio and open File Project Structure. In the project structure, go to ELK location and set the Android ESD location if it is not assigned or location has been changed. The Android Entity is a toolset that allows developers to create CNC code in their Android apps and is optional to fill up. Finally, to set the JudeK location, click on the Gradle settings, which would open up Gradle windows, and select the drop-down of Gradle Jargon. If the version required is not there, we can click on Download Joduck and download the required version. With this, we have completed the configuration of Android Studio. Next, let's look into the Gradle sync error and how to fix it. Gradle sync error. There is an error during the sync that could be viewed from the build tab. This is due to the requirement that the minimum Java level is not being met. Currently, I'm compiling with Java 8, but it requires Java 11 due to the Gradle version that is being used for the application. We could always check the Gradle version from File Project Structure Project and view the Gradle version that is being used for the SingSing. We could always check the Java version required for the Gradle version chosen from the Android official website. After confirming the Gradle version and plugin version used, go back to Gradle settings and change the JudeK version to JudeK 11. Once this step has been performed, go to Files Insync Project with Gradle files and select it to start the SingSing. Let's look into how to quickly change the Android package name. Quick change Android package name. If we want to change the package name for the project after it has been created, first, click on the setting icon Geotree appearance and unselect the compact middle package. Now in the Android project on the left side, we could see the package name has been split to tree formatted. So now, select the name of the package directory you would like to change. Right-click on it and select Refactor Rename. Choose the All Directories option to make changes for the package name and change the current name to something new like Hello World and click on Refactor. Now we can see the example package name has been changed to New Hello World, and we can go back into Tree Appearance to select the compact middle package. Lastly, we need to go to the Build Gradle for individual modules and change the application I2 to the new package name that was changed. We could also cross-check the package name in the relevant module activity or files to reflect the refactor name. Let's move on to the existing session, which is to build the first Android app. Build first app. Let's start looking into how to create a Hello World app. When the project was created, the activity template that was chosen was an empty activity. In the left-hand side, under the app module, click on the Java module. There is already an activity created by clicking on the main activity. In the main activity, the main thing that needs to be created is actually a content view. Android Content View is the primary user interface. UI, component of Android app that displays the content to the user. It's a layout that contains UI elements such as views, buttons, images, and other widgets that the user can interact with. Click curl layout name in the activity, and it would open the XML layout file. If we want to access the XML layout manually, it is located under Resid Layout. If we want to create a new XML activity layout, right-click on the Layout module and select the New, followed by Layout Resource File. In the main activity, XML, there is a string Hello World in the Design tab view. If you click on the Split view, it will simultaneously view both the XML layout file and the corresponding design preview of your Ops user interface. This allows you to make changes to the layout file and see how they affect the design in real time. In the layout file, there is a text view that is declared under the layout constraint. Layout constraints in Android refer to a set of rules that define the position and side of UI elements in a layout. Next, let's look into why the string Hello World is exactly in the center of the layout. In constraint layout, the constraints for each UI element using attributes such as layout constraint bottom, layout constraint indent2, layout constraint starters, layout constraint tosov, layout constraint potopov, and so on. If you like to change the position of the UI elements, go and click on the Design tab. There is a constrained layout widget that can be changed directly by dragging. We can see that the Hello World position is changing in the XML layout as we change the position by dragging in the widget. Whenever any changes or new attributes were selected, that would reflect in the XM layout file directly. There are several types of layouts available in Android, each designed to help to organize the UI elements of your app in different ways. Example, if I want to add black color text to Hello World string, we could key in Android, text color and set as black color code, or the color that has been saved in the resource folder. After setting the color, we could view in the preview of the layout the Hello World string color is updated to black. We could also make the text size a bit more bigger by key in Android, text size, and set the value in SPT, PEP, or using predefined text size, like small, medium, or large. If we do not prefer coding, we could go into Design View Scroll to the Common Attributes session. From their example, I chose to set the text appearance by choosing from the drop-down options. So it is really up to preference whether to code or directly selecting from design by setting the attributes. This is an overall summary of the constraint layout and the way to position the UI elements through code or design. Once completed, let's move back to the main activity. In the activity, we just coded the content view to use the ER layout, activity main. Before we look into how to test the app, the activity should be also declared in the Android manifest. In this example, we declare an activity called main activity with the Android name attribute set to main activity. When click turtle on Roid, name attribute, it would navigate to the activity. It's worth noting that you also declare other activity, related information in the Android manifest, XAML file, such as the activity's intent filter, which specifies the types of intents that the activity can respond to. In this example, we declare an intent filter for the main activity that specifies that it should respond to the Android, intent, action, main, and the Android, intent. This tells Android that the main activity should be launched when the app is started. Next, let's look into how to run this application in the emulator. To run the application first, we have to set up the emulator. In Android Studio, you can see there is an app and click on the Edit Configurations where we can change the configuration after installation into the emulator that the app needs to do. Now open up the Device Manager and click on the Create Device, where a new window would appear to choose the type of emulator to be created. There are a lot of emulated devices supported by Android such as phone, tablet, desktop, and so on. I am choosing a phone model for the hardware selection, and we could also choose which emulator has Play Store support and which is not supported, and click Next to proceed. Next, we have to choose a system image based on x86, which supports 32-bit and x86, 64-bit, which supports 64-bit or using an ARM processor. Depending on the system image, the user has to choose what Android version the application is targeted to be running based on the API level, for example Android 11, 12, or 13. Do take note that ARM-type emulators are slower performance compared to normal processors. Once we have done the selection and click Next, it would start to create the emulator. There are few ways to run the app when it is ready and the emulator is created. First way is to click on the play icon in the Android Studio to run the app. It would build and install the application directly to the emulator. We could see that after the build is successfully done, it would start to launch the emulator and install the application. There is a system UI error that is shown in the emulator. It should be fine. It could be due to the rendering process when it is trying to launch an emulator for the first time. Once the application has been installed, the default launcher would be triggered and launch the main activity. We could now see the Hello World UIC showing in the emulator after the installation. Congrats with this, we have successfully created the first Hello World app. There is another way of running the app in the emulator. Let's try to launch the emulator from the command prompt. Launch emulator from command prompt. Currently, the emulator and the coding can be viewed simultaneously, and it takes up space in the editor, which sometimes makes it harder to code. We could run an Android emulator from the command line using the SDUC tools. Can follow these steps. First, open a command prompt or terminal window. Next, navigate to the tools directory within your Android's DEC installation. On Windows, this is typically located at C UE username as beta auth or Linux it's usually located at Droid's emulator, while on macOS or Linux it's usually located at. If we don't know the emulator name, we could use the following command emulator list avts to get the list of emulators created. To run the emulator, use the following command emulator of emulator name to launch the emulator. The emulator created and launched would be standalone, and we could hide or move to anyways in Windows which give more space for the coding. For the last session, let's extend the current app by adding a button, and when the user clicks on it, to show a toast. Extend app by adding button show toast. Next, let's try to add a button functionality in the main activity and layout. When we click on the button, a toast as hello shall be displayed. The first thing we have to do is go to Activity Mains, XML Layout, and add a button option. To add the button in the layout, we could code it, or we could go into the design view and navigate to the palette and choose the button type we like to use. Just drag and drop the button into the layout and resize the button, depending on the dimension needed. Once we have completed, go back to the Code tab in Layout, and there is a button option shown, but there is error shown. The error is due to there being no constraint declared for the UI element under the Constraint Layout view. To fix the issue, we could go back to the Design view, and in the Constraint Widget layout, we could add the needed constraint for the UI element. After that, go back to the code layout and start changing the text in the button. It's always good to practice coding to create needed strings in the string exam. So the reason why we're doing this is in the future, we could have string translation for the same string in different languages. Let's say I want to name it as ClickMe, and now we can see after the change, it would reflect in the layout view. We could always click on stale string name, and it would navigate into the string XL to view the string declared and make any changes. Now we have completed the change in the XML layout, and now let's go back to main activity to continue. Whenever we click on the button, we have to show the toast as the action. We have to code for this functionality in the main activity. In the main activity, implements view on-click listeners for the button whenever is being clicked. Once we have added the listener, there is a method that has to be implemented, which is the on-click method for the button. If you have any errors during coding, Android Studio will show you some suggestions when we hover on the error, and by clicking on it, we'll fix the code. After creating the listener, we have to declare the UI element in the XML layout that we would like to listen to. In the onCreateDeclare, the variable to which findViewBe in the layout, when clicking on Grullit, I would bring to the UI element in the XML layout to cross-check is the variable assigned to correct ID. We could press on the Tab key to go back to previous activity. After assigning the ID, the variable also should be setOnClickListener to this activity reference, so the onClick would be able to receive the listener. Since we already created a variable for clicking and setting the listener, so now we have to program the onClick action to be performed. In the onClick, we can always compare the view, get it with the actual UI element id in the layout to determine the action to be performed when we have more than one UI element. If the ID matches the button created, we can use Android Toast. Make text where we need to declare current activity context, the string to show as hello world, and finally is the toast display to be short or long. For short toast is ones and for long, toast is twos long for the display of toast. Now we have done the coding to add the button and toast. Let's sync the build Gradle first due to the changes in the layout and activity. Once the sync has been completed, we could run the application and test in the emulator the new changes. In the emulator, we could see the hello world string is there, but the newly added button element is not showing. This could be when we created the layout, we did not based on the dimension of the emulator that currently I am running on. In actual world, we're using a different dimension of devices and every manufacturer has their own sizing. Currently, I am using the Nexus 5 emulator, but my dimension is for Pixel 2, which is a much larger dimension. After making the changes in the design view, we could see the button is outside of the dimension of the layout. One of the best ways to fix this is to remove the layout margin for the button that was declared. Once removed, we could see the button appearing inside the layout dimension. Now, we could just click on the run to build and install the application back to the emulator to test the new changes. Now we could see in the activity the Click Me button is showing up. When we click on the button, there is a toast shown as Hello World Toast for twos. That's it for the introduction to Android Studio. To recap, we have gone through how to set up Android Studio, how to create a new app, and we also extended the app by adding a button functionality. If you do find this video helpful, please do like, share, comment, and hit on subscribe button for more Android videos. Please stay tuned till the next video. Thank you.